Hi, I'm Martin MacAlistair. Welcome to Chatsunami. We're here for a very special month. It's Godzilla month. It's not Godzilla month, it's Digimon month. The other creature month. Pokemon? Yeah. Welcome to Pokemon month.
Hello everybody and welcome to the very first episode of Pokémon Month. My name's Satsunami and joining me right from under his truck is none other than the one and only Martin MacAlistair. Martin, welcome back.
Under my truck. I wasn't expecting that, but thank you very much for the introduction. It is good to be here to talk about one of my favourite subjects. I'm trying not to laugh at how much you're laughing at your own joke. Pleasure to be here.
It's more just I looked at your face and how it dropped significantly as if, why do I come here? Why do I come to record these episodes?
I thought you were going to introduce me as like Pokemon Master or, something nice, but it's always a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, there's a reason why I introduced you as that. I didn't just say, he looks like he crawled out under the truck. No.
You said I was under the truck.
I know we get really good signals there.
Yeah.
So, how are you doing today, other than that intro?
I'm doing very, very good. I'm very excited to be chatting about Pokemon, so let's just get into it. Let's go. I'm hyped.
Yeah, I cannot wait, because today we are indeed going to be talking about, let's face it, pretty much the first thing that a lot of people seem to be introduced to in the Pokemon fandom. That, of course, being Pokemon Rumours, including Under the Truck. We'll get to it. But yeah, today we are indeed going to be talking about Pokemon Rumours. And I've got to ask, before we start talking about the wide and wonderful world of Pokemon Rumours, when was the first time you got exposed to the world of Pokemon Rumours? Because you and I, we've established in previous episodes that we are massive Pokemon fans when we were growing up. We went through the heights of Pokemania in the 90s, the early 2000s. So when was your first exposure?
My first exposure to all this was pretty much not long after Pokemon Yellow came out. I do want to quickly establish something here, because everything we're going to talk about today is a bit ludicrous. And people who maybe weren't around at the time will say, wow, you were dumb for believing a lot of these things. But it was the perfect mixing pot cauldron of dumb, especially when by the time Pokemon Silver and Gold came out, that these Pokemon rumours, I think they were so big because it was this perfect moment in time. So obviously the internet is in everybody's homes on dial-up at this point, and it is a hodgepodge of complete nonsense. I don't even think Google is fully established yet. I think we might still be at Ask Jeeves at this point.
AOL.com.
AOL.com. There are these things popping up called forums. Is it Angel Fire being the most famous?
Oh yeah.
Of the early game FAQs, yeah. So you could put whatever you wanted on the internet back in these days.
Oh yeah. The rumours were boundless, weren't they?
And I think what helped was Pokemon itself is complete nonsense. So I wanted to just list some things that are true about Pokemon, just to give an established of what Pokemon actually is. So a couple of things that are true. There's a Pokemon called Mew that is not in the game, but the original games. There's a Pokemon called Missing No, which is not a Pokemon but is in the games. Generation 2 introduced this thing where 1 in every 8,192 Pokemon were a different colour. Never established why. There is a virus that your Pokemon can catch in Generation 2 that is also never explained. If you bought Pokemon Yellow, you were told that there was a game where Pikachu could surf hidden within the game. You could not get that surfing Pikachu unless you owned a copy of Pokemon Stadium. These are all facts, by the way. These aren't rumours. They introduced held items in Generation 2, including berries. One such berry was called a Miracle Berry. You could not get a Miracle Berry unless you got it on a Pokemon called Celebi, which wasn't in the game in the UK. The only way you can catch it on a Celebi is if it's a random encounter, which you couldn't do because it was all event Pokemon. And then all sorts of hodgepodge stuff. I'm not going to go into them all, but certain links between N64 games and the actual games, things working differently between generations, secrets about each move. So things like Minimize, if you use the move Minimize and then you get hit with Stomp, it does double damage. That was just never explained. And finally, just to add to the hodgepodge of confusion, there's tons of things, especially in Generation 1, that say they're going to do one thing and actually do the opposite. So I think is it dire hits and anything that boosts your critical hit actually makes it less likely, while moves like Razor Leaf always critical hit unless you use the move that boosts critical hits, in which case it doesn't. So I just wanted to give everybody that to understand of where we were at. And so when I first started getting exposed to Pokemon Rumours, it was A, this early thing of the internet, or B, the school playground, because that was where most of information came for games, was that. And to give you more context on that, a friend of mine said that he'd finished Final Fantasy VIII, all 6 discs of it. There was only 4. So easily disprovable facts were also accepted as fact. So that's back. I guess the question back to you. What was your early exposure to Pokemon Rumours?
Well, I just want to backtrack on something you said there. Just the fact that you were saying how some people might listen to this episode and think, how could you believe that? How could you think that? But I think what a lot of kids don't really know nowadays is just the fact that information back then wasn't as widely available as it is now. And one of the ones I always remember is you used to get game guides and things like that. You could actually buy books. I've actually got a book and it's got different tips, hints, things like that they've written in, say, oh, you can catch these Pokemon here, you can catch those Pokemon there. In that same book, there's a quote from Professor S. Oak, right? Part of, and to borrow a phrase from Adam from a previous episode, a proud member of the Pokemon intelligentsia, right? You know, he is up there, he is well respected in his field, and he tells you, as a gullible 10-year-old kid, that you should catch powerful Pokemon with the Master Ball, which, for anyone who doesn't know, it's the one hit catch-all ball. He says you should catch powerful Pokemon like Fearow. So excuse me if I'm not trusting of these guides. But going back to what you were saying, the fact that there were so many rumours circulating, because the internet wasn't as widespread. It's not like kids nowadays flip out their phone, they can easily fact check their favourite YouTubers, you know, they're talking about it, they're not talking about it. So at the end of the day, it was a completely different landscape. But I think I was in the same boat as you, because as we spoke about in our Pokemania episode, Pokemania was rife both in the 90s and the early 2000s, and I think by the time Generation 4 came around 2000 and I want to say 5 or 6, then that's when we started to move away from it, because we were getting older, we were going into our teenage years, or it's not phase mum years as it were. Yeah, it was a really weird time to be a Pokemon fan, but it was a time of, and I'm romanticising it here, but it was a time of intrigue, it was a time of, oh, let's be actual explorers. I'm not going to go as far to say this must be what the adventurers of like
really Shackleton has nothing on what we did, but
David Livingston, who's he? You know? We're the true pioneers, okay? So you had to play these games and you had to discover whether or not it's true. And one of the ones that always blows my mind, it's one that you and I talk about quite frequently, is the fact you said earlier you can't get Mew in the games. And officially, no, you can't. But what some people out there might not know is the original games, Blue, Red and Yellow, they're made of spaghetti code, okay? They are held together by hopes, dreams and prayers. And I think it is absolutely insane how these games came out the way they did, but they're so beloved and they kept together just enough to have fun. But there's a glitch in that where you can actually catch Mew, and I remember I saw this online and I was like, there is no way this works. People were saying, oh, you can do this, you can do that. I was like, there is no way this actually works. I tested it. It works. And it doesn't even just work for Mew. Basically, the way it works is you have to go in front of a trainer who's off screen, but then just before they see you, you have to press the start button and either fly away, use a escape rope, any kind of thing like that, and that in turn will lock you out of the start menu. The only way to re-enter that start menu is by going to a patch of grass and you have to fight a Pokemon. Now, depending on the Pokemon you fight, it's got like a numerical value attached to it, which then corresponds with another Pokemon. So if you fight Slowpoke, which is the one just north of Cerulean City, I think, for this to work, then yeah, you end up defeating them, you fly back to Cerulean City, you go up to the Nugget Bridge, the start menu will pop up, it'll go away, and yeah, then Mew pops up. But what's even crazier is if you use Growl or Tail Whip, I think, about 6 times on the Pokemon that you're fighting before this glitch happens, then it ends up up that you can get a level 1 Pokemon that as soon as you level up, it immediately goes to level 100. And you can do this glitch as early as Viridian Forest. So I did it once, and you can just break the game. So you've got a level 1 Pokemon, and the game registers it as, oh, you've got enough badges and everything. And then I think technically when it turns 100, then you're like, oh no, it doesn't obey anymore. But it doesn't matter. You know, what's a bug catcher going to do against a level 100 Nidoking? Nothing. You're screwed at that point. So I know I've kind of spent a lot of time describing that glitch, but I just want to emphasise how crazy this era of Pokemon is. Generation 2 as well, there was the cloning glitch. Have you ever heard of this? Yeah. Where you deposited a Pokemon and then you use, I think it was a select function or something.
It's the swap function.
Yeah, and then just as you were switching boxes, while it was saying saving, please wait, you had to turn your Game Boy off and then turn it back on. And that sounds like it would just bugger up your game, it would corrupt it, but no. It actually clones your Pokemon. I used to do that all the time, so I'd have like hundreds of legendaries and things. Well, not hundreds, but you know what I mean. That was crazy. So this is our confession. When we talk about these myths and rumours, this is what we're talking about. This was the kind of wacky, insane era that we had to deal with growing up.
This is so funny because like so much was true that so much nonsense gets through.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think that's why it was so susceptible to just what sounds like complete nonsense rumours, but I mean everything else that we've just listed was true, so why wouldn't these things be true?
Exactly. So this is our confession, our final thoughts on Pokemon. This is the quickest month ever, isn't it?
I was going to say episode 1 we're done.
Well, we start with some fan favourites from Generation 1. So let's get the truck out the room first. The one that's sitting on top of you, of course.
Please use strength to move it.
Yes, that of course refers to the truck that is parked right beside the SSN in Vermilion City. Now, whenever you go into Vermilion City and you go onto the cruise ship, the SSN, there's a truck right beside it. And the widely held rumour was that if you surfed towards it and you used strength on it, then you would be hiding behind it. And it's become so widely known that a lot of people say, oh, look, they've put references and things in. It's really cool the way they've done that, because I think you could get like a revive and things in the later games if you go up to it and you click. I thought that was really cool. But yeah, it's not true, is it?
No, but one of the things that's so fascinating, and this was, I guess, a testament to how little they knew they would do, it's a fairly unique sprite, if I remember. It's not used anywhere else in the game, and it is just tantalisingly out of reach.
Yeah.
So it's like, of course this rumour would start, because what you would do making a game is you wouldn't put a unique sprite out of reach if it didn't do anything, but it does something. It's there. There's a very similar rumour which I'll just kind of lump in with this one, which was in Pallet Town. It's a little square, and then just to the right of Pallet Town is patches of grass that you can see.
Do you know, I was thinking the exact same one when you said that.
Right, and so this patch of grass was on the right hand side of Pallet Town, you couldn't get to. It's such a fascinating lesson in game design where you should never do this to the player, where it's something that is very obviously interactable that just isn't interactable. It's not there. And it's funny because they knew this, so like you said, they referenced the truck in other games. It's become sort of famous even within Pokemon, but they also knew it as early as Generation 1, where the Pokemon, is it Fuchsia City, has the Pokemon in little paddocks, little stables. You can't talk to them, but if you actually glitch in the game and try to talk to them, there's text boxes for them. So they obviously were aware that people wanted to interact with them, but so they put cover on it so it didn't instantly break the game. So the fact this truck is here as a unique sprite that was made is so tantalisingly close and then they hide it from you. This was meant to do something.
Do you know what's even wilder about that? Speaking of the Pallet Town fields or the pallet fields, whatever you want to call them, the absolutely insane thing about this is people have, again in retrospect, they've glitched through the coding as it were and they've gone through to the fields. There's nothing there.
No.
They've not programmed any. That's the weird thing. I thought, oh, maybe they'll have the same code as like Route 1 where they'll have Rattatas and Pidgeys and things like that there, but no, there's nothing there. It's window dressing for nothing.
It's so weird because they don't do it in lots of other places as well. It's only really those two specifically that are like, oh, here's interactable objects outside of the user's grasp. It's such a weird thing for them to include.
It's really odd. And speaking of Pallet Town, I want to go back to my arch nemesis here, Professor Oak.
I'm so glad we talked about this one.
Do you know how I actually found out about this one?
Go for it.
Or rather, how it was is technically true.
Let's start with the rumour and then we'll go to the truth, I think.
In the game, there was this rumour that if you did something, I mean, that is the linchpin of all these rumours, that if you did something 100 times or a ridiculous amount of times, rinse and repeat, you beat the Elite Four 100 times, or you get to fight, different people in it. And one of them was Professor Oak, who would have this full team, including, I think, the starter that you have.
Yes.
Or rather, the third starter that wasn't chosen.
Pick, yeah.
And that is really weird, because initially, when I saw that, in the games, it's not true. You cannot do that at all. You can't fight Professor Oak. I mean, you can imagine it, but you can't fight him. Now, the way I found out about how this is technically true is the fact that when I started streaming, I played...
I didn't realise this was how you found out.
Yeah, well, this is how I found out it was real, but it's something that I never really looked into, because I heard it was cut content. But again, it's like the rumours, I've been hurt before. I don't want to touch it again, but there was like a glitch in the game that I was playing. So I was playing this very buggy version of Pokemon Green, the Japanese version, and someone had poorly translated it. That's all I'll say. It's a terrible translation. Hilarious, but terrible. But the issue with it was that because it was so buggy, even for a Pokemon game in Gen 1, it was so buggy that I couldn't progress past the Elite Four, and I couldn't even get past. It was really frustrating. I was like, well, I can't complete the game. So I said to my audience at the time, you know what? I'll try and use the code of the champion, and then I'll just battle them elsewhere with a different trainer. But what I didn't realise was there was a list in there that said Professor Oak. And yeah, he exists.
Yep.
He exists. So he must have been cut content at some point.
That's what's so fascinating about it. So there was a plan at one point was to have a battle against Professor Oak. What I think is really interesting is in Pokemon Silver, Gold and Crystal, Generation 2 games, you fight Red at the end.
Yeah.
And it's a very similar setup. So in the sense of there's this final boss who's actually someone familiar to you. And so I think they must have kept the idea of having Professor Oak in it. Why it got cut, I don't know. But I think this one's so fascinating because there was truth in it. And that's so funny to me in that it was discovered. If that makes sense, why did people know about this to make was it just a coincidence that the rumour started?
Yeah.
Or did someone somewhere find out using trainer codes or some other glitch and figure out that Professor Oak with this bonkers team was in the game and then got cut? How did that rumour get out there?
Because I'm not sure if it would have been linked to, the action replays and things like that. I don't know if it would have been related to that, maybe. That they would have had the code in there to fight Professor Oak, maybe. But something that I want to point out before we go into the next one, though, is what's amazing about these rumours, by the way, is despite the internet being in its somewhat infancy, let's say. When I say infancy, I don't mean it wasn't, around, but it was more the fact that it was quite rudimentary, because we had dial-up internet, and for those kids listening out there, if you don't know what dial-up internet is, look it up on YouTube, because it's an amazing sound. I'll leave it there, but yeah, the crazy thing about it, though, was these rumours were universal. For a time where the internet, even though we did have the forums eventually around Gold and Silver time, I mean, we got Pokemon around the late 90s, early 2000s, because I think 2000 was when they brought out Pokemon Yellow.
Sure.
Could be wrong in that, but I'm pretty sure that's when that particular version came out. The fact of the matter is, it's just as absolutely crazy to think that everybody at the time was spouting the same rumours. They were talking about Mew under the truck. They were talking about Professor Oak. They were even talking about Bill's Garden, which is the other one.
Sure, yeah, they're very similar to the Pallet Town one, which is, again, beat the Elite Four 100 times or catch every Pokemon 100 times. What was supposed to be in Bill's Garden? I don't remember.
I think...
Probably Mew.
Just chilling on a beach lounge. Yo, what's up? My name's Mew. Gonna catch me, aye? I don't know why he was Scottish.
Of course he'd be.
Of course, aye. The most devious kind of Pokemon. A Scottish Mew. Yeah, I think it was just a rare Pokemon that was supposed to be there. I think it was if you showed him all the evolutions. Lairon, Jolteon and Vaporeon and Eevee. Because I think he does tell you about them. He shows you them for your Pokedex, but he doesn't give you them.
Right.
So you know about them, but I think if if you were meant to show them, then there was meant to be this big area, and of course people have gone out of bounds to double check, and yeah, it's a lie. I'm sorry guys, I didn't want you to find out this way, but it's an unadulterated lie.
One that you just, and I don't know if this was in relation to Bill's Garden, but one that just sort of sparked to my memory banks as you started talking there about Mew being in Bill's Garden was one of the rumours I remember now is there was a period between, and we'll chat about this maybe in one of our next episodes, but there was a period between Generation 1 and Generation 2, sort of when Pokemon Yellow was out, that we were aware there was more Pokemon coming. So the Pokemon movie comes out and there's some new stuff already in that because Togepi, which is Generation 2 Pokemon, is already in the anime by this point, so it must have been earlier than that. So one of the ones I remember from Bill's Garden was that Togepi was in the game.
Oh yeah.
And that was where you got him. I don't know if it was Bill's Garden or somewhere similar, but that was one that someone gave you, and that's just, now that you've mentioned it, I'm like, oh, of course we would think the Generation 2 Pokemon were in Generation 1 as well.
Do you know what's crazy about that though? It's the fact that, see, nowadays, if that was the case, then they 100% could patch it into the game.
Yeah.
It's a weird thing because, see, back then, you know, once the game was done, it was done. There was no...
What a disaster.
Yeah, exactly. There was no updating it, there was no patching it. That was it. You got what you got given, essentially. It was absolutely crazy to think of a time where, yeah, that was it. Here's your game, kids. Yeah, I remember that. Have I ever told you, like, how I found out about Generation 2?
No, but I am wondering if this is another rumour. So.
No, this isn't a rumour. This is 100% true.
Let's go for it.
So I was in a particular cinema, you know, not going to name any names, but I'll tell you after. But I was in a cinema when I was younger. Can't remember what I was seeing, but I was coming out, and for some reason, this cinema used to carry themed postcards.
Oh, yeah.
Just when you were walking through the corridor, they would just have them hanging up for some reason. Really cool, don't get me wrong, but just really weird. And I saw this weird creature on the front. And I think it was like Typhlosion, and they had like Meganium and things. I was like, what is that? That looks like Pokemon, but it's not Pokemon because I've got Pokemon.
Yeah, and I know them all.
Yeah, I know all 151. I've seen the anime. I'm a goddamn Pokemon master. Who wants to throw down? I looked at it, and then, you know, it was like taglines underneath, like, come adventure with me, come do this, that. And it was to advertise Generation 2. And I was like, oh my god. You know, obviously I knew about Togepi and things, but beyond that, I had no concept of, oh my god, there's going to be a sequel that's going to be bigger and better.
Two things. Number one, I love the idea that when you were a kid, you were so much a Pokemon fan, you called it an anime.
Yeah.
Thing two, and I don't know if you ever saw this one or if you were ever aware of this one. I wasn't until I was an adult, and I think that's partly because I wasn't on the internet so much at this point, but the whole concept of Peekaboo.
Oh, yes.
So I wasn't aware of this at the time, and it wasn't until much later in life that I found this one, and it is very, very funny. So, as you're saying, the Generation 2 launch, leading up to launch, there's so many rumours about that and what was in it, and you see Donphan in the Pokemon movie, and that was this whole thing that was an amazing Pokemon, blah, blah, and they're teasing other Pokemon, like Ho-Ho was already in the show by this point, teasing lots of things. And there is a Pikachu looking guy that is blue.
Yeah.
And that became, we know it now as Marl, but at the time, apparently people started calling it Pikablue. And it was rumoured to be a new Pikachu.
I wonder why though. Well, I get
it
why,
has
you
the
know,
exact face, is what I think is what did it.
But it's weird because, and again, we know this through retrospective right enough, but in every generation, there's always a knockoff Pikachu. You know, Generation 2, technically, you know, it's Pichu. Generation 3, it was Minun and Flussel, I think.
Yep.
Generation 4, Pachirisu. 5, ooh, I don't know what the fifth one was.
Emolga? Was that?
Oh, Emolga, yeah. Oh, wow! I did not expect that.
Trivia episode's gonna go well, boys.
Cracking the knuckles. But yeah, no, I do remember Peekaboo. But speaking of Peekaboo and weird evolutions, have you heard of the Yoshi rumour?
That's put something in my brain. Tell me. It's sparking something, but I can't put it in, I can't think of what the pre-evolution of it is.
So it was an April Fool's, and I can't remember the specifics, but one of these guys on these forums was like, oh, to get Yoshi in it, and it was like to evolve Dragonite.
Yes.
You had to use like a Firestone, I want to say. I could be totally wrong in that, but I'm sure it was a Firestone or it was something like that. And yeah, someone had actually made a sprite for it. There was also another thing. It was like Luigi was supposed to be in the game, just as a Pokemon. It's like, you know, I don't know the thing. Like Yoshi, at least you could kind of say, right, okay, it's a creature. Yeah, okay, fine. But Luigi?
No, this makes perfect sense though, because Pikachu's in Smash Brothers, so obviously Luigi would be in Pokemon.
We didn't have the MCU at that point, okay?
This was the closest thing we had.
These were dark days, guys. I mean, before that, we had the 90s Captain America film. Come on.
I mean, those are the halcyon days.
I think I'm going to be sick.
On the subject of dark days and going to be sick, I do have to mention...
What a sick.
Thank you. This is why I get paid the big bucks.
Yeah.
Andrew's listening to us like, you're getting paid? This is why I get paid the big bucks. I do have to mention Lavender Town. I don't want to go too deep into this because obviously there's certain subjects that we won't talk about in the podcast.
Rest in peace, those guys.
Okay, apparently you're going to talk about it. But we do have to talk about Lavender Town.
Yeah.
I feel like if we didn't, it'd be a complete...
disservice to those kids.
God damn.
Sorry, go on.
Lavender Town is the ghost spooky bit in Pokemon, and one of the common things in these forums was creepypastas, and these kind of grew arms and legs by themselves, and basically they always follow the same structure, which is game looks like it's been normal, something happens, realistic blood for some reason. So imagine programming that on the Game Boy, and jump scares, person is either dead or
rocks fall, they're dead.
Rocks fall, someone dies. You see this very much with like Sonic.exe is one of the famous ones. There's a Mario.exe, and Pokemon had its own version, which was Lavender Town. And one of my favourite sort of parts of this rumor, so the thing that we're referencing for Lavender Town was specifically what basically drove a bunch of people to kill themselves, is the part of it. But there was also a lot of things about the song itself, which is like you can play it backwards and it would spell out things, and if you opened up the audio file, which was something that's very easy to do nowadays, you just open it in Audacity, but back then nobody knew what that meant. If you opened the audio file, it would like spell out 666 or like realistic blood probably.
Oh, the pedal clutchers in America must have been going wild for this rumour. Like saying, the satanic panic's real, guys. What doing? Oh my god, here we go again.
So I did have to mention Lavender Town. I'd love to hear your thoughts on Lavender Town and the general creepypasta world around it.
The reason I'm being so flippant about this is because for anybody listening thinking, why is Satsunami being so flippant? Because it's not true, right? You know, do you really think I'm going to come on and be like, oh, haha, R.I.P. those kids? No. That didn't exist. I mean, kids did get hurt with Pokemon, but it was through the anime and the Porygon episode, right? Hashtag Porygon did nothing wrong, but that's another episode.
He's got his own 20-minute episode written just for that.
I mean, even Pokemon came out and said Porygon did nothing wrong. It was Pikachu, and it was, but that's another conspiracy, because you can't slap that in a box. But yeah, it was that idea of just shaking his head in the corner. He's done. The fact is that the Lavender Town rumour comes from a long line of creepypastas where, as you said, realistic blood, that's one of them. Oh, I went to a garage sale and the creepy man gave me Pokemon.
Yes.
Now, right.
Don't take Pokemon games from strangers.
See, now this is the thing. Like, see, I feel so old saying back in our day, but genuinely, when we were growing up, it was drummed into us things like don't do drugs, don't take things from strangers, be very aware of your surroundings, very good lifelong lessons. Those lessons have been discarded for the trends of TikTok, right? Speedrun, take creepy cartridge from stranger.
Pokemon.
No, but that's true though. It's like, oh, I was walking by myself and then all of a sudden, whoops, bearded man came and gave me a cartridge, and you're like, I believe that your account, sir, is very flawed.
You're not a reliable narrator. Random person on the internet, Pokemon Fad 1237.
And the thing that we're referencing when we say realistic blood is the fact that every time there's an account, they always say the realistic blood and everybody's died.
Realistic Go always shown in these games, despite computer graphics being like 1 polygon per square inch.
Yeah, because this is the same era where when we tried to catch Pokemon, we would, and this is another rumour, but we would hold A and B down, or just B, or B and down. I would actually
do down and tap B.
Of course. Did it work?
Oh yeah, 100%.
Oh, of course.
I would actually officially go on your podcast, and I want to tell the world that holding the Game Boy upside down, pressing down, which would then be up, I guess, and then mashing B every time.
I can't wait to record the retraction. Just to be like, I'm sorry for the lies spoken this episode.
Dun, dun, dun.
What a bop. Apparently, this is something I didn't know, because obviously, as I established at the beginning of the episode, by the time you and I left the series, I mean, don't get me wrong, we never fully left, we're kind of on the outskirts of it. Yeah, the precipice. That's such a good one.
Thank you.
God damn it. I forgot my thesaurus today, so it's on the truck.
I left it with Professor Oak.
But apparently, during Generation 4, with the rise of the DS, it had a microphone in it for certain games. And a lot of people said that if you yell gotcha or something like that, I can't remember, but something like that, and they yelled that, then technically that would that would help the process of catching. And I was like, really?
That's good, I like that. But then you say that, really? But then it's like the previous generation, the one that just came out before it, which is something else I wish I'd mentioned in my facts, but the Reggie trio, that was the most made up thing where you caught them by having specific Pokemon and using specific moves in certain locations, and you had to read Braille, even though...
You're not supposed to read Braille!
Braille's a 3D physical thing that you use your hands for. You had to...
It's like hearing sign language, though.
So like bizarre. So when you say these things, and that's what I always want to establish and keep this grounded, that Pokemon was so much full of nonsense that honestly yelling gotcha into the microphone
isn't the weirdest.
Yeah. Honestly, probably true.
That's the thing though, because there's a lot of cut content that we know now through looking at the files and things was supposed to happen, but the one that always gets me is the fact that the Reggie trio in Sapphire, Ruby and Emerald, that was fine. You know, reading Braille, let's not get into that again, but reading Braille, that was fine. That was 100% fine. But apparently there was a event or something to get Arceus, or Arceus, whatever you want to call him. But the fact is, you're supposed to go into this cave, you were supposed to play a Pokeflute, it took you to a literal stairway to heaven where you met Arceus and you caught him. That was too complicated for kids, apparently. According to Game Freak, that was too complicated. Yet somehow the Reggies weren't. And what's even weirder is, and I don't know if you played or know much about Sea Sword and Shield, the generation before, as of this episode.
You've dated it.
Yeah, but there was a Pokemon where, I can't remember if it's like one of the food type Pokemon, which is the thing I'll always have an issue with, more than you having issues with human clothing on Pokemon.
Oh, okay. I thought you were going to say me having an issue with food.
Well, that too, but yeah, there's this Pokemon that you have to turn your Switch upside down and evolve them or spin in a circle.
I was going to say, vanilla, the ice cream Pokemon, you have to hold certain items in your party and then spin, and it mixes the ice cream with the thing.
It's so weird because that is something you think, oh, somebody's pranking me here. Someone is 100% pranking. But no, it's true, apparently.
That's good.
Yeah, because we have the technology to disprove it. But back then...
Back then, that would have been all over the place.
This is like, you know, when you look back in the past and you're like, how did they believe in witchcraft? You know, this is... This is our satanic panic. Like, how did that happen? There's one actually that I want to bring up, and I don't know if you would have came across this one about going to space. Have you seen it?
Absolutely not.
So, in Pokemon, I think Ruby, Sapphire and Emerald, Generation 3, there is a space station called Moss Deep Space Station. It's like the big island you go to. One of many, because it's all underwater. Hashtag too much water. That's dated it now.
I was going to say, I mean, that was dated 10 years ago, but...
There is a particular scene, or rather area, where, as I said, you go into the space station and they count up from how many successful launches they've had. So, like, one week you'll go in, oh, we've had 4, and then next week, oh, we've had 5. And apparently it does nothing. It's just, genuinely, it's the biggest tease of Pokemon, because people thought when it reached 100, or if, again, you beat the Elite Four so many times, then you would jettison off into space and you would fight Deoxys in space, which technically is something that they did fix in the remakes, technically, because there is like a post-game story where you can fight Deoxys in space, but Deoxys is in the game, but he's like an event-only Pokemon, so you had to get a particular item from the same bearded man that was giving you Pokemon Blood version, and it was so weird. So he is in the game, so is Mew, but again, it's event-only, and it's nothing to do with the space station.
One thing, it's funny, just when you mentioned about the count up and it doesn't do anything, one that I believed in as a kid, and I don't know if this is a rumour or just I made this up myself, but
let us know in the comments.
Please let us know if you've heard this one as well. So when you board the SS Anne, there's a woman at the front, or on the boat, I can't remember which is, but she says SS Anne comes to Vermilion once a year. And the reason I remember this is because I thought if I loaded the game up in 1 year's time, the boat would be back.
Now, I have never heard that, but that makes so much sense.
I don't know if I ever loaded the game back up to find out, but I assume it doesn't come back.
Yeah.
And this is this thing about Game Freak not knowing the power of, we were talking about Mew in the truck and the pat to the grass. I don't think Game Freak understood the power they had over children.
Yeah.
When if you dangle that carrot in front of them, the SSN comes back once a year. Well, it's coming back next year then. It's like, an adult wouldn't lie to me.
Kids, this is a PSA. Adults do lie, especially Game Freak.
They've got freak in their name, don't trust them.
Well, that is true. There was just so many rumours, though, that floated about at that time. And as I said, it's definitely a product of its time, because one that I don't think we've touched on yet, speaking of Yoshi, things being in it. Do you remember Mew 3?
So,
yeah.
Not Mews Free specifically, but I want to talk about, I don't know if this is the same concept, so where does Mew Free come from? Because I think we've got, I don't know if I've got the same thing here, but...
I think it's Generation 3. I could be wrong. At least it looks like a Generation 3 sprite, because whenever I saw the screenshots and things like that, it was always leaf green or fire red, that kind of backdrop. It was always that. It was never the old kind of school, like, deformed warped sprites you used to get back in the good old days. Back when Pokemon was Pokemon. Not like these Digimon looking people.
So what I think Mew 3 might have been is when you were talking about receiving your cartridge from a weird bearded man.
Yeah, it was a style at the time.
It was a style at the time, and what was also a style at the time was fake games. So
Pokemon Mononoke edition.
We're going to talk about fan games another time, but this isn't a fan game as such. People would sell them at like car boot sales or...
They still do.
They still do, to be fair.
If you go to any market when you're on holiday, they always have it.
Grand Theft Auto 8.
Yeah. See, this is the thing. I don't mind so much that they've got them. Make a living, I suppose. But the fact is, it's not even that. It's always the same one. It's like Pokemon Diamond or... this was before Diamond came out.
Pretty good for guessing the names, because I saw a Platinum as well.
But it was like Pokemon whatever edition here, and it was always the deer from Princess Mononoke that they had underneath. I could never understand why it was this specific artwork. They were committed to the brand, and you've got to give them that.
Yeah, but that was thinking, so those games, I think, were full of stuff.
Yeah.
Because they would have been either just nonsense, or they would have actually been a game in disguise. And so I think that's another thing that fed into the rumor machine, was like, Mew Free, and it probably was the Princess Mononoke game, maybe, or like maybe it was like Kirby or something. Like, who knows what these games actually were? Or it could have been, an RPG Maker fan games that were put on these cartridges, because so many of them became like, I think a lot of that came into the pop culture in terms of like Mew Free and stuff. A lot of them were just taken from these games, and I think there's like evolutions that ended up being Digimon and things like that as well. Like, the Digimon Pokemon crossover was very complicated.
Have you ever seen the Pikachu platformer?
No.
It's like, I don't even know how to describe this. It's like a side scroller with Pikachu, but I think they did a hack, or rather changed the sprites from Pikachu to Sonic, but then it's like a bootleg of a bootleg, because it's not even originally a Sonic game. It's like the same jump animation things, but it's not a real Sonic game, so it's a hack of a hack of a hack. So oh, it's so weird.
I think I'm out of rumours.
See, when you think about the really cool and funny rumours, it's usually Generation 1, Generation 2. Thinking back to Generation 2, there was some, that, as we said, the Peekaboo and things like that, but I don't think there was really as many in comparison to Generation 1.
I think maybe if you're a little older, maybe.
Yeah.
I do want to read one more. I've actually got one I want to read out.
Oh no.
This was from Generation 3. There was a rumour. This was covered by a YouTuber called Small Ant, and he covered it recently, but it was called the Magic Muffler.
I beg your pardon.
As in a muffler for a car exhaust or a scarf.
Go on.
Right. So this is one of these ones that kind of inspired me to do this, because so much of this is true. So this was from a forum posted in June 6th, 2005 at 11 o'clock at night. I don't know why that makes it so much funnier. This 10-year-old boy on the internet.
At 11 o'clock at night going, do you know what I'm going to talk about? The magic muffler.
I'm going to spread lies on the internet.
Do you think people would do that?
I don't think so. So, okay, this is too complicated for beginners, so I suggest that only those who succeed will do these cheats. If you want, it's up to you. First thing to do, release all of your Pokemon except the weakest one. All my Pokemon are level 100, cool face, so it's worth it. Second thing to do, challenge Elite Four. You should you'd win it. Also, this cheat will work fast if you won't use any healing items. Don't forget, challenge Elite Four 10 times. It's gone up already. Third thing to do, trade with a friend. Trade your weakest Pokemon, which, no, it doesn't work because you only have one Pokemon. Uh-huh. Your friend will give you a Rattata holding a Klapapa berry.
Is this Gen 1?
This is Gen 3.
Oh, okay.
So, one of the things about this berry, because this was, so again, Smaller did this, you couldn't get that berry in Gen 3 without having Gale of Darkness.
Yeah.
I won't go through the whole thing, but fourth thing is you have to use the Versus Seeker on every single Pokemon trainer from Pallet Town to the Savvy Islands. It's Gen 3, 5 Red Leaf Green is what it is. Fourth thing, catch a Jatini, raise it up to a Dragonite, make a Dragonite hold a Sarlacc berry, challenge Elite Four 5 more times, go to Professor Oak and then use Fly Indoors 3 times, trade your Dragonite, the Sarlacc berry will become a Magic Muffler. Question, what does the Magic Muffler do? It makes your Pokemon experience move fast. For example, your Squirtle holds a Magic Muffler, Squirtle is level 5, after battling, your Squirtle will be level 97.
It is not worth it.
But that's the thing about all these cheats, is so many of them were like, release everything, beat something 100 times.
Do you know, that actually happened to Andrew, I'm pretty sure. Andrew, sorry for calling you out in this episode, but that's what he told me, I'm sure. He's mentioned it in an episode where he got really upset because there was some rumour where it was like, oh, you have to release your most powerful Pokemon. He was like, but I don't want to do that, of course. But, you know, he did, and now he's hosting a podcast with me, so, I mean, who won? Who won out of that arrangement? You tell me. Yeah, it's a shame, to be honest, because despite the fact I was kind of laughing at it and reminiscing about it, it's a shame that nowadays kids probably won't get the same, I don't want to say excitement, but you know, the same kind of wonder about the games.
Yeah, it's a different type of thing now.
Yeah, because nowadays, as I said at the very beginning, you can just go on the internet, you can Google it, you can look up your favourite YouTuber, and that's the thing, it's like, oh, well, it's not as fun, as it were, but even still, like, you're not wasting your time, that's all I'll say. You're not wasting your time nowadays, but even back then, it was a time of wonder and exploration, let's just say.
A time of learning not to trust everyone.
Well, on that note, and this is indeed not a rumour, thank you, Martin, for coming on and discussing Pokemon rumours.
You're welcome, and one thing to take away is, don't trust what you read on the internet unless it's about Pokemon.
Or us.
Or us.
Well, mainly Pokemon, but... And on that note, thank you all so much for listening to this episode. If you want to catch more Pokemon Month episodes, as well as other episodes from ourselves, you can catch us on the website, chatsunami.com. I also want to thank our Pandalorian patrons, Robotic Battle Toaster and Sonia. Thank you so much for supporting the show. For any exclusive content out there you want to get a sneak peek of, or catch our commentary tracks, catch our early access episodes, then you can catch us at Patreon. But until next time, thank you all so much for listening to this episode. Stay safe, stay awesome, and most importantly, get out of that truck.
Most importantly, don't listen to the Lavender Town music at 1 o'clock in the morning.
Welcome to Chatsunami, a variety podcast that discusses topics from gaming and films to anime and general interests.
Previously on Chatsunami, we've analysed what makes a good horror game, conducted a retrospective on Pierce Brosnan's run as James Bond, and listened to us take deep dives into both the Sonic and Halo franchises.
Also, if you're an anime fan, then don't forget to check us out on our sub-series, Chatsunami, where we dive into the world of anime. So far, we've reviewed things like Death Note, Princess Mononoke, and the hit Beyblade series.
If that sounds like your cup of tea, then you can check us out on Spotify, iTunes, and all good podcast apps.
As always, stay safe,
Stay awesome, and most importantly,
stay hydrated.
Hey there, I'm Tara.
And I'm Jessica, and together we co-host the podcast 3 Spooked Girls.
If you love the paranormal
Or murder.
Join us on Mondays for full-length episodes where we discuss our favorite paranormal stories and true crime cases.
And join us again on Thursdays for our mini-sodes called Stabby Snippets, where we tell you all about true crimes happening in the news.
You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Podbean, Spotify, or wherever the hell else you listen to your pods at. You can also find us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook by using the handle @3spookedgirls.
Come and hang out with us and get your spooky on while we scare the hell out of you.